So that's it from us for now. We're going to hand over to World's Cooldown.
Thank you very much, and welcome to World's Cooldown. I'm Quickshot, joined by Raz and Jat. I was wondering where the camera came from, actually. Welcome to World's Cooldown. Jat, sweating a little bit after the late game there from Cloud9. What did you think? Always.
I saw it.
You knew. Yeah.
Man, look at this guy.
Look, let's talk a little bit more about the game, because the way it started and the way it ended could not have been more different. Cloud9 came out the gate swinging. I really liked how they approached the early game, but the last pick, Garen Yuumi, just caused so many headaches.
It got spooky because it was a non-sustained damage team against what, after seeing enough games of Garen Yuumi now, I'm willing to call probably pretty busted. With the way it just sticks around. That was 2 games we saw today where Garen Yuumi was down like 3,000 or 4,000 in the early game and then just seemed to control the map throughout most of the mid-game.
Yeah, I think that what Garen Yuumi provides post-nerf, because even thinking about how large of a slow that she initially had made it crazy. It's just the cooldown.
Yeah.
Cooldown on Q is huge with the damage that it is coupled with. Also, the ultimate that is constantly flowing through after every fight is insane.
So I do want to break this down in the context of like a bigger meta a little bit later, but what do you think about the draft? Because Garen Yuumi, we've seen Fnatic, they first pick it. This HKA draft was response. It was the last 2 after seeing no Kayle, no Vayne, no AD carry, no sustained damage threat, so therefore obviously the value gets significantly higher.
Yeah, I think if you don't think Garen Yuumi is going to be contested, picking at 4-5 is actually really smart, because you could see that Cloud9 actually already locked in the Heimerdinger in phase 1 of the draft, so they weren't going to be able to have the sustained damage coming through, which potentially I think would have allowed HKA to have a good game. I actually thought that Mission misplayed some team fights in the mid and late game that could have actually led to victory, and C9 was able to pull it out, as they usually do at the World Championship. When I pull back in history, they have a lot of these games where teams they actually should beat, they squeak through, but they seemingly always win. It's weird.
What did you make of Niski? One of the things that I really liked when we talk about Cloud9, you know, 7th World's appearance. I believe Sneaky was, what, 70 World Championship games played on the stage. Niski's debut, and I thought he looked pretty good on the Akali.
Yeah, I thought he looked pretty solid. I think overall, Niski on the Irelia, it's a melee champion for Niski. It's what he's specialized at, and I think as long as Cloud9 continue to enable him to play these mobile side lane, solo lane champions and back it up with powerful early game junglers from Svenskeren, that's their bread and butter, and if they're going to win, it's going to be through that.
Yeah, and I like the fact that he was being able to play through Svenskeren, as once again, I just wanted to see domestic, you know, C9 in an international event. I didn't want to see any drop-off, and I think that just from the framework of Niski and Svenskeren, I got to see that. Unfortunately, from Licorice's point of view, I think he got outplayed once topside. You know, Akali was able to find that kill once, but in team fights, then the Renekton was a beast that they couldn't really handle. Akali really couldn't find a flank on that.
Slightly like obscure thought, but do you think it's fair to say from how we saw the game play out, how it always felt like Cloud9 were in control, and it felt like what they were fighting against wasn't the team of Hong Kong Attitude, because it felt like they were the better team. It felt like they were playing the OP-ness of Garen Yuumi.
Yeah.
Do you think that's fair?
It could just be our read on it, because I'm much more familiar watching Cloud9 than I am Hong Kong Attitude.
Right.
You know, I've seen them in the play-in, and I actually haven't seen that much Garen Yuumi, though. It really did feel, though, like it was just Garen would go wherever he wanted, and it's a front line in a summer split where teams haven't been able to have a frontliner.
Yeah.
So it was like, oh, this is what team fights look like. This is what front to back looks like. And Garen just does that when he has Yuumi.
And even just focusing more on the comp that was there, because while people would say that Heimerdinger would have sustained damage, it's not followed sustained damage. Like the Garen can just peace out and that's about it, right? And the only ones who can follow and kind of pursue the Garen is the Irelia, and now suddenly you're trading HP against that. So
sorry to cut you for one second. The interview is ready. I want to come back and talk a little bit more about how this is playing out at Worlds. Let's talk to Niski.
Thank you guys. Laure here, and joining me right now is Niski after Cloud9's first victory in the group stage. Congratulations on this one. You're back in Europe. This is also your first time going to Worlds. How special is it for you?
I don't know, to be honest. I feel like it was just another game, and I don't even feel like we're at Worlds, kinda. I mean, the pressure is for sure higher than like playing LCS, but yeah, I mean, it's just another game.
Let's talk about this first game because you had the edge in the early game, and then we knew that with the compositions they have, they would be stronger as the game go. You had the good vision control, and you had the nice side lane wave being set up as well. So what made it difficult for you to come back on top in the end, and how did you overcome them, knowing that they had the scaling in the end?
To be honest, after the early game, we tried to force some stuff. Like, we got every dragon, drift, and then once Nash spawned, we tried to play around it, and then they had like blue trinkets, like they were always checking it, so we couldn't do it. And then at one point we're like, okay, we're just gonna flip it, and then I think Sneaky got the Nash, and yeah, that just unlocked the game, I guess.
Teams struggle really hard against Garen Yuumi, which is understandable. You have several answers, such as Vayne, but do you feel like next time you should ban these champions, at least Garen?
That's up to my coach. That's not up to me. So.
Right, well, we'll see what Reapers decides now. According to history, Cloud9 makes it out of groups. I feel like you don't have the easiest group to do it. So what is your take on that based on what you saw from the teams in your group? Griffin, G2, and HKA right now.
I mean, I think it depends on how we perform individually, I think, because the thing scary about G2 and Griffin is that they have really good individual players. So I think if we can keep up with them or just even like outclass them, then we'll make it out of groups for sure.
We'll see that in the next coming days. Thank you very much, Niski, and welcome back to Europe. Now back to you guys.
I love hearing from Niski. Not the most confident of answers about Cloud9 making out, but very earnest and fair, very strong individual players. Let's take a look at the standings from today and talk about some of the other games that are now in the history books. Pretty confident, clean win from G2. Team Liquid not being able to take down Invictus. What else stands up for you, Raz?
So, yeah, you already mentioned Invictus Gaming. I think the kind of takeaway that I have here is that IG's back, you know? For me, everyone was...
Well, they are back, but that's to play the game.
Okay, come on, now.
I didn't love that personally.
Do you see a loss, Quickshot?
It's not there.
I don't see a loss.
It's not there.
Yeah.
But, like, when I say back, I mean... The questions for Invictus Gaming when they were coming in were specifically about individual players and talent, specifically Rookie.
I didn't expect results-based analysis from the two of you today. No,
no.
Great, man!
But, like, if we dig deep into the game, Rookie almost had a 30 CS advantage in the mid lane.
Right.
The Shy had that solo kill, even, like, multiple solo kills, actually. Even with all of the pressure that Xmithy put up into the top side of the map.
And we haven't even talked about RNG SKT yet.
That's true, that's true. And so, like, we had a lot of great games today. And I know a lot of people are talking about Group of Death for Group C. Group D is a very hard group, and all of it was coming down to the eye test of how good IG would look when they come into the group, and how Team Liquid would kind of come into Worlds, what form they would look like. And both of them look damn good.
Aside from that fight, TL was fine. Aside from that fight, TL was completely fine. No, IG, I thought the way, just kind of going back through the day, the way SKT won, I thought was impressive because they switched strategies mid-game. The way G2 run, I think, was impressive because they played champions you wouldn't have expected them to play, yet still won very quickly.
Yeah.
We'll get into that game as well. But overall, just a day of games that didn't actually seem like there was a big upset.
Yeah.
There were the close matchups that were relatively close. I think G2 won their close matchup more than I expected them to by. But other than that, I think the predictions we ended up doing, I think I was 5 of 6. You're probably something similar.
Yeah, pretty much.
Which one did you get wrong?
Griffin. Yeah. What do you think?
Well, actually, for me, that would have been 6 to 6.
I think I had a perfect record.
Oh, there we go. So we're actually verifying. I love the chat's actually walking over to verify.
Yeah, I was good.
I'm going to protect myself from myself with predictions.
Okay.
I've already locked all 8 days.
What?
I'm not going to flip-flop a single thing.
How is he going to do that?
That's short-sighted. The
That's
rules
not
you have to
good.
look at
Or
before.
am I thinking long-term?
Okay, but look at it this way then. All right, you're thinking long-term. You're looking at the whole group stage. One of the topics that we were talking about before we came on air was expectations of what was going to happen at Worlds versus the reality that we've seen. So we've got the playing stage, 2 days of groups. We've seen every single World Championship participant. The first topic I'm going to ask is of Garen Yuumi, which is a theme from today.
Yeah.
Fnatic, I did not have much faith in them when they fell behind early. But then Garen Yuumi gave me the confidence back. It didn't work yesterday for the squad, but like, let's get some thoughts on the specifics of the combo.
So they played their comp poorly. Like, I looked at the Garen and Yuumi, and while it was great, their composition was, their strength of it was in the Akali and Shen. that they should be on side lanes at all times. That, in fact, if they were team fighting up against that squad, that I actually favored a lot of the kite back potential that Clutch had in that game, and it was messy because it was supposed to be messy from Clutch. I think that that was unfortunate from Fnatic's side. Of course, they ended up picking up that win anyways. While in this Garen Yuumi game, you had the Tristana, you had the sustained damage. I actually love the team fighting. It just came down to execution, of course. So I think that is a strong pick.
So I hate watching it because it's hard to see like the great display of skill. Garen is no skill shots, just runs around. It's all about positioning, hard to judge. Yeah. And then Yuumi, you're never really wondering how much healing and shielding it's doing until you look at the charts afterwards. But it's a lot. And some teams had picked this up in Summer Split, specifically in EU, and then they had to question whether or not they were going to drop it because Yuumi got nerfed a lot. But what didn't necessarily get nerfed that much is the speed, the haste, the heals, and the damage. The slow was the biggest nerf that ended up hitting the win rate a whole bunch, which actually I think
is the least impactful thing that we're seeing today. Do you think that's fair?
Well, it makes Garen so good.
Yeah.
And I just keep seeing these teams not be able to kill Garen, and Yuumi wins the war of attrition.
Can we zoom out a little bit? And in today's games and yesterday's games, I've been a little surprised at the pace, the speed.
Yeah.
I was hoping a little bit more for Summer Split, skirmishes, like a bajillion flex picks everywhere. And I know there's been multiple patches, right? But talk me through, Jet, your thoughts on what expectations were versus what we're seeing.
Yeah, we asked for this. Games are about 2 minutes slower than they were in the Summer Split for the teams attending. This is the average of the teams that are attending. I think a lot of it has to do with champion picks, and a little bit of it has to do with nerves. I know Jankos had that interview after the G2 game where he said, actually, I think most of these teams are nervous based on what he's seen and based on what he's experienced in scrims, and I tend to agree.
I think a lot of it just comes down to the scare of losing a game one in a best of one to a lot of teams that you believe you should beat. Yeah. Like yesterday, a lot of people were running questions and making conclusions of IG versus their opponents on that one, and I felt like, I looked at that and said that, they should be able to beat AHQ. So going for a much more safer composition is not taking any of the risks that they usually do during the split and going for team fights later on. They were drawing out the game so they can go for team fights because AHQ domestically find themselves in a lot of Barons in one game. So a lot of the times they don't know how to close, and they took advantage of that.
Now, what about average combined kills per minute in terms of the action, the bloodiness of the games, Jats?
I think they're one and the same, but I think the more pronounced slowdown is in the first 15 minutes.
Okay.
So we're not seeing the lane swap craziness or like as much flex pick craziness. We're not seeing necessarily big time early game solo kills or a bunch of crazy turret dives. Teams are neutralizing a fair bit, and that one, if we're seeing a game like Kale, I think is from the champions. Yeah. But in a lot of situations, I think it's what Raz just said.
You mentioned champions as well. What about some of the expectations? I know during play-in stage, we were super hyped about Echo for day one, and then we saw it, and then we were questioning it, and it's kind of disappeared. I don't know if it's fair to say we're expecting to see more Syndra bot, but it's definitely popped up, right, infrequently, but my expectations based on coming in was a little higher. What about you guys and some of the other picks that you're seeing?
Yeah.
So I'll say just immediately what we saw from play-ins oftentimes was based off of what they saw in solo queue that was succeeding, and a lot of these teams just being so successful off skirmishing, just really fighting it out. Like watching the OPL teams or watching the Brazilian teams, just realize that, when they went up against the better teams, oftentimes like Splice and Damwon, that they were just choosing their fights and not oftentimes getting what they wanted. It was like, okay, this is really frustrating to use the picks that we had. So Echo was put on the bench. Gragas was heavily prioritized so they can get the fights that they wanted. Yeah. And now suddenly you're starting to see like Jarvan and Galio again because that's like starting the fight is important. Setting the tone of the game is right.
And if the slower early games keep happening, I wonder if we'll see more Karthus jungle.
Say that again?
Karthus jungle. I feel like we might see more of that. And more largely, I'm curious to see like what this tells us about our projected favorites for the tournament.
Yes.
If G2 can continue to have caps on Orianna and Wonder on Ornn and look like that, they'll be fine. But that's a one-game sample size of them good on those champions versus a year of them playing completely different stuff and looking awesome.
Yes.
So I feel like if the game stays like this, I'd actually be even more willing to back SKT.
Okay, but then step back and zoom even further out, right? How much does the world's meta evolve over time, right? You think back to last year, think of the previous year. There are pivots, there are tweaks and changes. It's not monumental, right? It's not the foundational changes. But then it's figuring out who's the first one to get there, who's the first one to break this, or find the optimal pick within this like team fight style.
That's a great question, and I feel like even watching Invictus Gaming today, I feel like I'm so far from figuring that out now. Because when I saw them pull out the Olaf, it's like, oh right, like in LPL playoffs, it's like, Olaf is such an LPL pick, and it was so successful in that region, but not really finding ground in like the LCK or LCS in some ways. And then I was like, well, suddenly the Gragas pick and the Lee Sin pick that we've been seeing so frequently is put under danger if you don't see that as a viable blind pick when an Olaf is there and available. Yeah. So I think we'll be seeing more of these teams go up against each other, especially in the knockout stage, and we'll start getting our answers then.
Yeah. If I think back to like Worlds 2017, I remember Caitlyn ended up being a huge pick in week 2 of group stage. Yeah. I think the bigger shift will happen for stage 2. We only have a 1-day break, but the teams themselves will have multiple days off before they end up playing the onslaught of games to decide their group. So I think we'll see minor adjustments in the next 2 days, but the big changes will be in week 2.
And it's very interesting as well because even the big changes, it is a day between the first half of groups, second half of groups, and then we have a larger break to quarterfinals. Yeah. That's where I get very excited about what pivots are going to come. But let's talk about tomorrow's matches, take a look at the schedule of games that we have on the docket, and then see which ones are going to be the most exciting. We start with Invictus Gaming taking on Dam1 Gaming. Why are you excited, my man?
I'm just saying, whoever makes these schedules always know where to put them. Right at the top. Right at the top. IG, Dam1. I want to see that again.
Implying that only the top game is the best. All 6 are insane.
That's beautiful.
Chat?
Dam1, TL, FPX, J-Team, Griffin, and G2.
Yeah, easy, agreed.
Done. 6 for 6.
On board.
Nailed those predictions.
Now, are you 100% certain that those were the predictions that you logged in your
100%.
And you're not going to flip-flop on us? Because you have a tendency to do that, my friend.
Yep.
What do you want to see from the teams coming in tomorrow? You know, some pivots, some changes. Like Dam1 have still impressed me on, it doesn't matter what champions they play. Every game, there's something that's like, wow, that was cool. That felt awesome, right?
Yeah.
But like, what are some of the thoughts when you think about the teams and changes for tomorrow?
I'll say specifically for Dam1 because I like the one point that I always want to track, because I always love tracking the players that have the least riding on their shoulder, or at least everyone kind of wants to throw them down the bench, specifically Nuclear.
Yeah.
Because at the end of that game where he just like jumped straight in, got a huge burst on a champion, and the reaction time of the rest of his team, like they knew that was going to be the case, that they had his eyes on him. Yeah. Like, I'm seeing confidence come out of him. And it's very rare to see confidence in a player that is oftentimes like publicly being thrown down the bin. So I actually think that just that alone, I love to see that. I want to continue to see that. So maybe we'll be seeing more Nuclear going nuclear in some of these games.
I would like to see.
Small point.
Go for it.
I don't disagree.
Okay.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
But
I mean, no offense.
I think Nuclear is a great case study for this. I feel like imprints of your memories of a person and a player last a very long time in League of Legends. I think one of the reasons people are saying Nuclear is bad is because they remember him on H2K.
Yes.
If this was, if his name was Nuguri, right? How good would he be? He'd be like, that weak side AD carry though. Right? Or like, I think that could actually happen. I don't want to be that guy that says like, oh, a winning team, everybody is good. But I hear you. I feel like Nuclear is being remembered from the past, not from what he's done.
For me, it's a timing element. They need to be good, better, best for a longer period than being bad. But just,
it's tricky.
He would have.
Gambit was my example. Gambit started to suck for a long time, and I was one of the early adopters saying they're bad now because the moniker of Moscow 5 had ended. But look, we do have to call it a day. Thank you guys very much. If you missed any of the action, make sure that you tune in for the rebroadcast starting at 8:30 here in Europe, or 11:30 a.m. for our friends on the West Coast. Tschüss and bis morgen.
I kind of understood that.
Here we go.
RNG's going to play, but nice cast. Uzi's going to be in some trouble. Wants to come in from the side. Faker's looking to make some kind of a move here off the side. Xiao Hu's in some trouble. Clint's going to blow him up. Effort now going to be run down here in the mid lane. McConn's able to come in from the side. Uzi going on a rampage. Faker's going to be taken down now.
That's the him, and he's out of there.
Another TP is going for more.
Oh, they're all going.
SKT are now on the Nexus turret.
Well, they got the
SKT, they play the map right. front line, forcing double lift away, and IG are able to survive. Shockwave! With the Shockwave finds 3. Invictus Gaming find their fight. They find the Baron. They almost find the Ace. Impact tries to flash away, but he is chased down with a killer instinct.
What we're learning is they're beautiful and sensitive. That's the duo right there.
Perks maybe overstepped a little bit here. Knocked back across the wall, right into the waiting arms of Sword. Do it by the numbers. G2 for the final hit. Then the Nexus Towers have to be the target.
Oh!
Shockwave, the solar flare, and Griffin lose 2 in a heartbeat. That's 3. Make it 4, make it more. G2 scream.
Well, after our scrims, we decided that we would play a bit safer, and it worked out.
Baron goes down, but have Cloud9 sacrifice their lives for it. Unified still healthy, 1,000 HP on him. Sneaky goes low, no flash remember, but he's going to back in the back of the pit. Unified being chased down, the final chapter coming out once again. Unified will take the kill as Kaiwing gets 1. Now he's going to jump onto Dreezy. Heals him up with the zoomies, exhaust goes down on Licorice. Kaiwing jumps out, gets the shield back. Licorice on a double kill though, and Kaiwing has nowhere to go. C9 finally find the fight. Kaiwing's going to jump back onto mission, but the Nexus will fall, and Cloud9 will eventually take their win.